themesh.tv, an online network of original free audio and video shows based out of Western North Carolina, reaching the entire world. Listen and watch through iTunes or through the website themesh.tv.
Hey everybody, welcome to the RealTailgate.com College Football Hangout, a weekly Google Hangout sponsored by Smithfield's Chicken and Barbecue. I'm your host, Big J. Waldo. Ben Swain is in the producer's chair, and Talking Moose Media has our back on the technical side. You can join us here every Wednesday live at 9:30 p.m. as Ben, myself, and a rotating set of panelists discuss college football in North Carolina. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Smithfield's Chicken and Barbecue, and they want me to remind you it's just not a tailgate without the barbecue. Log on to RealTailgate.com for special offers, a list of locations, archived editions of this hangout, and download the RealTailgate.com College Football Podcast. This week, our panelists include the old standby Ben Swain from the Walk-Ons, Dimitri Ravanos. I always want to do that. I'm so sorry, Dimitri. From the RealTailgate.com College Football Podcast, we have James Curl returning from Riddick and Reynolds.com. This week we have a special guest, Joe Ovies from The Fan. And back again is Patrick Johnson from the North Carolina News Network. How's everybody doing this week?
Swell.
Doing good.
Swell.
Doing good.
I see the towers coming along behind you, James.
Yeah, we're still trying to get it straightened out. I don't know if we'll ever get that squared away, but I did want to say this week, in honor of the strong opening performance of Jameis Winston at Florida State, I've decided to also add an I to my name, so I will be Jameis Curl this week.
Very nice. Very nice.
By the way, James, enjoy the first half of this hangout. I know you're going to be bouncing out of here in about 15 minutes.
Yeah, got to get to the car.
Got to pass out. Maybe you'll come in, depending on the heat for the night.
It is hot.
Did everybody get to watch some football this weekend?
What is this football you speak of?
Who went? Put it that way. Who went to a game?
I did.
What game did you go to?
I had to go to the NC State Louisiana Tech game. That was the game that I was covering on Saturday. So I got to see the future ACC Player of the Year, Brandon Mitchell, and his 2 series against Louisiana Tech before he went out with the injury.
Youch. Broken feet hurt.
They do. The most amusing part about that entire process was while NC State was announcing through the press box that his return was doubtful and he was having a foot issue, we've got his brother on Twitter saying, "Oh yeah, man, he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. It's a broken foot." And then they had to scramble to explain, like, well, we're still trying to verify that. And obviously, we find out after the game that was a 5th metatarsal. He'll be back in time. I'll be back in time for that North Carolina game. Ratchet up the rivalry stuff.
Tweet guy.
Anybody else make it to a game?
I made it to Greenville to watch the Swiss cheese defense of ECU continue to get carved up, proving it's not the defensive coordinator, just the really bad lack of talent in the secondary. But they won.
Scathing review from Patrick Johnson.
I checked out the Battle of Durham between Duke and NC Central, which was
that actually
everything
a battle?
that. Yeah,
it was more like you trying to pick up women at an old folks' home. I mean, just constant success, right?
Absolutely.
Steady rolling.
Are there any winners in that scenario?
Wait, so am I the only one that didn't go to a game?
I did not go to a game.
Oh, very good. Why would you go to a game on the first weekend of the season when there's so much great stuff you can watch on television?
And it's so much cooler inside your house.
Exactly.
Well, I had to work. I had to do the post game for East Carolina, so I had to be there.
I am mostly unemployed, so I could do what I want.
Excellent. All
I
right.
have to go so I can tweet pictures of attendance. That's kind of my role.
We're going to jump right in here and talk about our focus of the program, the 4 North Carolina ACC schools and East Carolina. It'd be great one day if I could just say it with one statement, but, it has to
Never.
be complicated.
Never. Never happened.
So we talked last week about, what the ACC could possibly say with some success in these big games, or some of the games against the SEC at least. One reasonable success, right?
Oh, yeah. Clemson getting the job done.
Well, I mean, that was beyond a reasonable success. They were the only top 10 team that I think you left the weekend saying, that looks like a top 10 team.
They look good to me.
ACC.
Well, I think the only issue. Well, no, I think the only thing that's holding Clemson back. We know that Clemson's capable of winning games like this. It's the losing to NC State 2 years ago kind of a thing that is holding everybody back. When Taj Boyd's on the Dan Patrick show earlier today, having to explain what Clemsoning is, you've kind of got that stigma against you. But credit to Dabo Swinney. After the game, he tried to make a point. He actually made 2 points this week that I think are worth discussing. One, Clemson's been the most consistent program in the ACC basically since Chad Morris has shown up to the team. The games that they've lost outside of the NC State game, that's really like the big anomaly. They got blown out by West Virginia, I get that, but NC State's the real big anomaly.
That's what we do, baby. Anomalies.
Right? But that's the thing about that. Is that really Clemson? Because Joe Giglio, the News and Observer, brought this up in a kind of an aside in his post about the idea of Clemsoning. Was the NC State loss 2 years ago Clemsoning, or was it a classic case of TOBing? NC State did this last year to Florida State, where a lot of the angst is on Jimbo Fisher for bad coaching and bad clock management. But NC State has had a history, especially with Tom O'Brien, they've had a history of surprising big teams out of nowhere and saving a guy's job for the next couple of weeks. But losing on the road to South Carolina and the like, that's not really Clemsoning, and they're not going to have any of those problems leading up to the Florida State game on October 19th. That's going to be their first big test, and Florida State's got the defense that might be able to stop Taj Boyd and the rest of that crew, but we'll see between now and 6 weeks.
So, Joe, let me ask you this. Do you feel like addressing Clemsoning on the national broadcast like they did, like having Taj Boyd on the Dan Patrick show talking about Clemsoning, is that acknowledging Clemsoning as a thing in much the same way that we sometimes joke about NC State stuff?
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's okay to embrace that and have some fun with it and completely demystify it rather than have it this big taboo subject. Fans will embrace NC State stuff, but I am fully aware that administrators at NC State are aware of NC State stuff, but you'll never hear anybody, a coach, Mark Gottfried or Dave Doran, talk about it. Not the way that Clemson's doing it right now.
But Joe and James, isn't the problem with Clemson, or really anybody, isn't the problem with Clemson is not going to be the Florida State game, the South Carolina game, the Georgia game. It's going to be that, I think this was said on ESPN by Herb Street maybe, that noon game against Maryland with a 3/4 empty stadium for them to be up and ready to go for that one. Because they're going to have to be ready 12 times during the course of this thing to get to at least one of their ultimate goals.
Well, that is sort of that's sort of the very point is you kind of look at, and Florida State has so much of an unknown factor, not only at quarterback, but at a lot of positions this year, on the offense anyway, that I kind of almost don't look at Florida State as the next test for Clemson. It's almost now just keep it going until you play South Carolina. So it doesn't so much become about Clemsoning from the sense of do they lose the one they're not supposed to. It's do they not get up for the one that right. They're not supposed to. You got
to remember too, though, Demetrius, that these are college students at the end of the day. I mean, you could make the argument that outside of maybe Alabama, because Nick Saban will destroy you if you're a player, and look at they just beat Virginia Tech 35-10, and what were Saban's comments about a wake-up call for some of these players to actually get their act together? But other than that, any college team is up for one of those weird letdowns because they're 19, 20 years old. I mean, they can't be consistent. I mean, heck, were you consistent when you were 20 years old in college? I know I wasn't.
Consistently bad.
None of us are finely tuned athletes.
No, I mean, look at us. Do we look at Ben? Does Ben look like a finely tuned athlete? No.
I hate to switch gears here, but I'm
focused.
going to have to. It's not necessarily about getting up for a big game. What I saw out of Clemson on Saturday night was that they went out and got themselves a defense that actually got some stops at key points in the game. They've never done that before. I mean, is it that simple that they're just a better football team this year?
They absolutely are a better football team, but let's sort of move off of Clemsoning for a second and talk about the fact that Aaron Murray to that game as well.
Yeah,
well, does this lead into Ben, one of your topics that you sent out about narratives? We've got Clemsoning versus Aaron Murraying. What other narratives can we toss into the bowl within one game? It does seem like there are, beyond the simple game itself, there's 5 or 6 different narratives, if we will, that come along with every single matchup, every big matchup. So, yeah, you've got Clemsoning versus Aaron Murraying versus Mark Richting versus Dabo's whatever Dabo is.
So did Clowney?
Mark Richt has already lost control of the program. That's the line. That's the line.
Right. Yeah, and you've got guys calling and crying on talk shows. I mean, I don't know. Is now the time to get into that, Ben? Because I think that was a very valid point of discussion that you suggested.
Yeah. So my issue with the Clemson game is we even mentioned Herbstreit talking about that noon Maryland game. Even before the game is over, instead of saying, man, this team's looking like the best team that we've seen play in the opening weekend, we're talking about a loss that could happen 7 weeks from now. I mean, I just don't understand. We spend the entire offseason begging for real college football to talk about, and then we get real college football and we immediately jump into storylines that haven't even developed yet. It frustrates me to no end to see that happen.
I think it sort of speaks to our just lust for football. I mean, the Saturday is over and we're already thinking about what's next because we can't wait for more. Fortunately, this week we get games, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday because of the return of the NFL. I think the first weekend is a tough one to say, we don't put enough emphasis on what happens on the field into because, A, it's our first real football in a long time, and B, even though it's so spread out, the NFL the next day for us to focus on what just happened on Saturday.
I mean, that's true, but if you look at the Florida State game, even before that game's over, what's the story coming out of that game?
Is Jameis Winston a Heisman candidate?
No, it's Jameis Winston didn't go to Texas because they didn't recruit him.
And
that's the story coming out of that game. How stupid is that?
Mac Brown a lot. But what's dumber though, Ben? The Jameis Winston story, which again, it's all how you want to spin recruiting tales and everything else, but that Mac Brown feels the need for not just one day to address it, but for 2 days after this game to actively set the story straight. And I guess in Mac Brown's case, he has to deal with a list of quarterbacks that could have gone to Texas but didn't. Who are all the greats that could have gone there? I think Russell Wilson probably could have gone to Texas if Mac Brown just would have called. But we got Andrew Luck, we got Robert Griffin III, and we also have now Johnny Manziel, who's off being a punk, according to people. Which you want to talk about the next thing? That's let me sign something for you here. No, but I find that. There you go. No, so I mean, I agree. Like we can't necessarily talk about the games anymore because what's moving content? I mean, doing a talk radio show, nobody's going to listen to you if you're breaking down the game and getting into the too deep going into a game. People want the controversial stuff. We probably could have killed Tuesday's show after Labor Day talking about the pass-outs at NC State, but we didn't because there are other things to get into. But those are the kind of hot-button, big-picture things that people will eat up. That's why you see it, Ben. I know it drives you nuts because you're the intellectual sports fan, but for the common people want that kind of stuff.
Well, and that's the other part of
I like to talk about the football myself.
Well, and that's to the point that Joe is making there, it's now gone from radio, which now goes to how many 24-hour sports networks do we have? They have to fill content during the day.
Right.
How many people show up at SEC Media Day that work for a traditional media? Not many. So you have people that are trying to, that have blogs, that have websites, outlets like this that are trying to draw eyeballs to that. You have to talk about something more than just the X's and O's of it. So you have to create these storylines. But a lot of that, too, is because it's now the national pastime. Nobody cares that much about baseball anymore unless you're in one of the major cities where a team's winning. And in some cases, the fans still don't care. Football, 24 hours, 365 days a year, and so you have to feed that with everything that's going on off the field, and that's why the Jets have been the biggest story in football in the offseason the last 2 years because of everything surrounding them off the field. Clearly not what had happened last year and what's going to happen on the field this year.
Well, Patrick, I think the frustration is the fact that the off-the-field stuff is drowning out the on-the-field stuff. I mean, it would be one thing if we exhausted all the on-the-field stuff necessarily that we could discuss, but the on-the-field stuff is getting overlapped, drowning, obscured by the Mac Brown, who didn't he recruit for a quarterback at Texas narratives. I mean, that's the frustrating thing. I think that's what Ben's getting at, and what a lot of intellectual sport fans are frustrated with is that there probably is a smaller market of folks who would like to just discuss the games, but it's not what drives the needle, unfortunately. And what does drive the needle is what's burying the actual legitimate football discussion.
I don't think it's about talking actual football. I mean, there's storylines to be talked about. For instance, in that Florida State game, Nick O'Leary, who I believe is the grandson of a famous golfer. I think that's a storyline there. But the guy gets hit by a car and scores 3 touchdowns in the opening game. That's a great storyline to talk about. But instead, we're talking about something that never happened, right? We're talking about Jameis Winston might have gone to Texas if he was offered, and Mac Brown didn't offer. Why is that even in the conversation? Like, where did that come from? That's the story that I don't understand.
How does a kicker with the last name Blewett end up on scholarship? I mean, those are real stories that need to be explored. I mean, Blewett, really? This is, I don't know.
Wouldn't that drive you away from being a kicker? Did he have like pep talks from his dad? Your name may be Blewett, son, but one day you're going to make the big one.
Just think about it. His dad has to tell people, or he has to tell people, please, Mr. Blewett was my father.
Oh, boy. There's an Arrested Development joke in there somewhere.
I'm surprised we're not getting any notes from our producers. Well, we're mowing down some time here, so let's. I don't want to disrespect Ben's very thoughtful notes that he sent us all.
You're always hating on Ben's notes.
Do you want to go off topic? Do you want to continue like a sort of improvised line, James?
Jay, you're the host, man.
I'm just an accommodating host.
This is like Dave Letterman looking at Paul, going, "What do we do now?"
I'm the Edith Bunker of this situation.
That's quite a visual, by the way.
The Tailgate Special from Smithfield's Chicken and Barbecue. It's 8 pieces of chicken, a pint of barbecue, any 2 sides, 2 dozen hush puppies, and a whole gallon of tea. Just go to realtailgate.com for details, coupons, and a list of locations that open early on game day.
So I do want to ask about Clowney. Now that we've talking about the stories that are on the field or talking about the actual football, I've listened to a lot of criticism to the extent that I just want to smack people around about Clowney's performance. Anybody got observations about not necessarily Clowney's actual performance, but maybe the storyline?
You mean clown fraud? You did mean clown fraud?
Clown fraud?
Right? Isn't that...
He takes plays off, man.
Isn't that what we found out on I mean, why even talk about him anymore? The guy's done. He's a bum.
Oddly enough, when he was off the field is what's really making
well, I think what
news
was the apparently he had some sort of flu. He only ate what did he eat? Like a couple
Skittles.
I think it was basically like some fruit, and that was the end of it. He had some sort of stomach thing or some sort of flu.
Yeah.
As Steve Spurrier pointed out in the post game, actually I think even after that, I think his normal weekly coaches press conference, he was saying, look, it was hot. First game back, he learned about being in the spotlight. Do people really expect Jadeveon? Two things about Jadeveon Clowney. Do people really expect him to have a game like that going forward, especially with Georgia coming up? Number one. Number two, did people expect him to be blowing up a series every game? And I guess that's the unfortunate thing. The last thing we saw out of Jadeveon Clowney was that hit against Michigan, which has been, what was like, however many weeks as the SportsCenter top play. It was in a GIF form. We've seen it on YouTube. There have been missives written. I think Spencer Hall of Every Day Should Be Saturday did an entire 900-word essay on just one hit. And after time, we just start to get to this expectation, well, this is what this guy is all the time. Oh, and then there was the other offseason discussion, where should he even play football because he would be the number one pick in the NFL draft. When you get to that level based on one hit, there's no way he was going to meet him on top of the other off-the-field issues that he might have been dealing with going into the game.
We had John Pennington from MrSEC.com on the podcast this week to talk about the three SEC versus ACC matchups, and he talked about Clowney, sort of, to your point, Joe, kind of how unfair it was that his legend grew not from one.
Oh.
Also goes on to point out that, Clowney, if he has a hit like that twice a game, it's an amazing game. And you think about how many snaps he plays at defensive end, you're talking about a success level. In order to be considered a legend at that sport, a success level would be having success lower than what someone who gets to stay in the major leagues has, what someone who goes to the Baseball Hall of Fame has.
You mean like batting average wise?
I mean, he also needs a little bit of a cooperation that he doesn't get blocked on a play, a game, right? I mean, that's ultimately what happened in that Michigan game.
Blowing coverage in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. But it goes back to this idea of the narrative where we're talking about let's build a guy up to superstar status and then just do it in order to break him down. We're seeing that with a lot of Manziel right now. I think Teddy Bridgewater is going to be the next guy that's going to be in that boat where we build him up to ultimately break him down. I mean, Clowney's he's a defensive lineman. He's going to impact the game. He's going to impact the game plan in ways that we don't get to see. I think it's tough to evaluate him just based on one game that he still played okay. I mean, he wasn't horrible.
It was interesting though that by the end of the game they were posting his stats, numbers of hurries and sacks and clearly they were posting the stats not because hey look how well he did. It was hey look how far short of your expectations he fell in this game. It's sad, but you're right. It's all based off of one single play in a game, and
this is where we have to start expecting more out of the experts that get paid a lot of money to talk on ESPN during a game, whether it's analysis in the booth or it's when they go back to Bristol for these halftime shows and whatnot. You go back and watch the first half of the UNC game, and they game planned around Jadeveon Clowney. So he doesn't give you the stats that he wants, but let's look at the other things that's affected by Jadeveon Clowney. One, Bryn Renner looked tentative. They had some screen passes in the opposite direction of wherever Clowney was. They ran the ball in the opposite direction of Clowney. Again, game planning. When coaches are trying to coach around you, that's a testament to your ability. And then, what if you're not the one getting the sacks because you got two or three guys on you, or you got one guy and then you have a fullback or running back chipping on you? What about the other guys on the defensive line that are going to be getting theirs? Just because their stats are inflated and yours are lower, well, why are they inflated? Well, because you're the one that everybody's game playing for. There's this expectation that he's supposed to have 14 sacks or more, otherwise he's not going to be the number one pick in the draft. It doesn't work out that way. There's other guys on that line, and if you're the one that's being targeted, somebody else is going to get theirs. That's going back to you. That's a testament to how good you are. But nobody's telling you that on the broadcast. Instead, what we're getting is, well, look, he's clearly just not, he looks tired, he looks this, he looks that. I'm like, come on. There's some obvious things that you can catch here that you're not you're choosing not to talk about.
I think we were just shy of seeing the what if Jadeveon Clowney made one more shot per game Harrison Barnes statistic.
Oh, ESPN hypothetical.
Never gets old. Never forget. Hashtag.
Jadeveon Clowney was run off for the more popular. No, never mind.
All right, keep things moving. We only got 5 minutes left here, guys. So to sort of transition into the last topic, I don't know if you guys tuned in last week, but we started something called the RealTailgate.com ACC Pickoff.
Oh.
And it's basically some of our panelists picking games based on a spread for the 5 teams we focus on.
Entertainment.
And I think it was a tie across several people.
Just two. Just two.
Just two?
Me and some guy's wife.
Somebody else? Ben, do you know the stats? Are you supposed to be tracking this? Or
No, this is Shane's baby.
This is Shane's baby?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I can't remember who it is, but
it's me and some guy's wife. I told you.
You and some guy's wife.
Yeah.
So Patrick, you
Yes.
picked South Carolina State, Clemson, Bama, FSU. Those are all covers, right?
Yes.
They all covered. That's awesome.
Yeah, they did cover. Yeah, I got Dimitri told me everything to pick actually. So.
I would like to point out that Patrick did call me moments before the picks were due. It's like, why do we have to pick with the spread? I hate picking with the spread. I never do well with the spread. And look who came up with a perfect sheet.
Well, the spread's a great equalizer, right?
Yeah, the spread's a great equalizer. Come back to earth this week on this.
Okay, so given that we only had one actual sports, like football analyst, get them all right, are North Carolinians smart football fans?
Who's that, the wife or me? Who are you referring to?
I'm going to give you credit.
Oh, okay.
Regardless of whether it's deserved.
It's not.
For being an analyst and knowing what he's talking about.
He has a great college football show, by the way. Whoever.
But seriously, so are North Carolinians smart football fans? That's just cold, man. You're trying to derail me, man.
Sorry.
No.
Yes. I say yes. So do I need to support my opinion, or can I just simply offer up a single-word answer?
It is the last topic of the show, and we are closing in on closing remarks. So,
we're just taking a vote. Is that what we're doing here?
I say, what's the over/under on Dimitri's going to throw out the SEC and how he grew up with real football fans? Is that happening here in the next minute or two?
No. Listen, I respect North Carolina football fans and ACC football fans for living in a realistic world where every year the expectation is not national championship or the coach is out the door. Now, that being said, I think living in that world kept Tom O'Brien around too long and keeps NC State in a constant state of mediocrity. But it is more pleasurable than constantly hearing it's time to fire the coach at the end of every season.
Dude, you haven't been on the Devil's Den, man. They are ready for some national championships over at Duke. They've got full SEC. Full SEC over there.
You know, the only thing about this is, and I know this speaks to the fans' intelligence or just their interest level, but the East Carolina fans basically show up for September, somewhat through October, and it's very rare that they're truly jamming 50,000 people in that stadium come November. And then it was just this week, I guess, Dave Doran was groaning about the fans staying out and tailgating at halftime and never coming back into the stadium. I don't know if that speaks to intelligence, but it maybe speaks to interest level, and maybe that speaks to somebody's true understanding of being there for the actual game itself.
Well, that's all going to change once they get into the tradition-filled American Athletic Conference.
Yes, it will. Oh, yeah, it absolutely will.
all right, well, let's go around the room here. Patrick, anything to say goodbye with?
Thursday night, we're going to watch a team that's going to win the championship of their respective division. It's not the Ravens, the Broncos. It's certainly not East Carolina. There's Winston-Salem State. They're going to be on CBS College. They're going to win the Division II title this year.
Fantastic. A bold prediction. Joe Ovies.
Oh, is this I can say whatever I want here?
Yeah, well, football related, hopefully.
Okay, well, PSA, because Russell Wilson's going to be blowing it up again in the NFL. Let's stop asking Russell Wilson about Tom O'Brien and whether or not Tom O'Brien would still have a job at NC State had he just done the thing that everybody wanted him to do, which is start him over Mike Glennon. No, Tom O'Brien still would have been fired. Last year would have been probably worse without Mike Glennon as the quarterback. So stop asking him the question, please. It's 2013.
Fair enough. James Curl.
The fine folks at NC State have asked me to MC a pep rally on campus prior to the Clemson game. So I don't know what part of my show that they listened to where they thought I had a tremendous amount of pep, but I want to extend a tremendous amount of thanks to them.
That is going to be the calmest pep rally.
Hey,
everybody just chill.
Just chill, All
right. I don't mean to cut you off. We're running out of time fast. Dimitri, parting shot.
Yeah, quick plea to Clemson fans that have been sending me hate mail on Facebook. Please understand the post I wrote about you was praising the team and not knocking the school's academic quality. 6 people have sent me emails or Facebook messages telling me to go various places and kiss various parts of their body.
Excellent. I'd like to see those, please. Ben Swain.
Real quickly, congrats to the Charlotte 49ers for being 1-0 in their football history.
Excellent. Perfect record. All right, everybody. That's a wrap for us here. Thanks again to all the guests, especially Joe. I know you're technically challenged or something, I heard. No one knew it was difficult to get set up in time, but thank you very much.
I took a pill.
Oh, excellent.
Stay up. No, I needed a caffeine pill just to stay awake. So.
Oh,
that's pronounced technically
wrong
challenged.
Way. Okay, so thanks very much to Smithfield's Chicken and Barbecue. We'd like to remind you it's just not a tailgate without the barbecue. Make sure you check out the RealTailgate.com college football podcast. It's available at RealTailgate.com, themesh.tv, or on iTunes. I'm your host, Jay Waldo, for Ben Swain and the folks at Technical Moose. Talking Moose. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.
The Tailgate Special from Smithfield's Chicken and Barbecue. It's 8 pieces of chicken, a pint of barbecue, any 2 sides, 2 dozen hush puppies, and a whole gallon of tea. Just go to realtailgate.com for details, coupons, and a list of locations that open early on game day.
TheMesh.tv, an online network of original free audio and video shows based out of Western North Carolina, reaching the entire world. Listen and watch through iTunes or through the website themesh.tv.